Hi guys, welcome to a brand new episode of AB and the Films. And the answer is yes. Yes. I swallowed my pride. I went to the theater to see the final Twilight movie. And all I can say is, I love this movie. Yes. If you thought I was going to shred this movie to pieces, you are sadly mistaken. I loved it. It was the most hilarious, dumbest thing I have ever seen put on film. It is extremely hilarious. I couldn't stop. I don't think I've laughed this hard to a movie since Superbad. I actually am kind of hurt that I didn't go see the other Twilight movies in the theater. I am really upset I didn't get to experience that. Because, alright, well, here's the thing. This is the last Twilight movie, right? So, I got quite a few things to say here. Now, I'm not going to have a lot of negativity with this movie. I mean, it's bad, let's be honest, but it was still enjoyable to watch. And I'm just going to talk about not what I liked about this movie, but I'm going to talk about the other Twilight movies because hopefully, I know this will be the final time I will ever talk about Twilight. So here we go. I want to talk about the first time I ever saw Twilight, okay? In the fall of 2008, I think nearly every teenage girl had the book, Twilight. You know, with Edward's hands holding the apple. And I remember being a sophomore in high school, and one of the girls was reading it, and I said, "Oh, what's that about?" And I saw the cover, and she said, "It's about a girl who likes a vampire. She's a teenage girl, and she's going out with a vampire." And I thought that was a pretty interesting idea for a book, and then I heard they were going to make a movie out of it, and I thought, that could be good. It could be interesting. You know, there's a lot of stuff you can do with it. So, I didn't go see Twilight, but overnight, the movie made so much money. It was a huge phenomenon. They were comparing it to, like, Harry Potter, Star Wars, well, not Star Wars, but Harry Potter in particular, because that was the one that had a lot of kids, you know, particularly teenagers, liking it. And I didn't see it in theaters, so I waited till it came out on DVD, and my sister and I rented it, and we watched it, and my dad watched it with us. And I gotta be honest, when I saw the first Twilight movie for the first time, I actually was getting into it. I really started to enjoy it. I did. Until you get to vampire baseball. And for those of you who haven't seen the first Twilight movie, I shit you not, that's what they call it in the movie. Vampire baseball. The vampires are wearing baseball outfits. They look like they're about to go to the Little League Championships. And they're playing baseball. And they're speeding up the footage to make them run like the Flash. We all know vampires don't run like the Flash. We all know that vampires don't sparkle. We know that when vampires bite humans to kill them, what comes out of their teeth is not venom. That is a snake, not a vampire. Stephanie Meyer, did you watch Dracula at all? Okay. I'm getting negative. I promised myself I wasn't going to be negative in this, but how can you not be? Because it's so incredibly stupid, this movie. Okay, well, I'm getting ahead of myself. Here we go. So I saw the first Twilight movie. I saw the vampire baseball. Vampire baseball is when it started to get stupid, and then I said, wait a minute, should I be taking this seriously? And that's the key to this whole thing, taking it seriously. Because here's the deal. Now, I didn't see New Moon, and I didn't see Eclipse. So for those of you mostly the tweenage girls who are watching this review saying, oh, you didn't watch New Moon, you didn't watch Eclipse, you can't do this review unless you see all the movies. I don't have to. I know what happens in those movies, and quite frankly, I don't want to see it. I sat through Breaking Dawn Part 1, for God's sakes. That's punishment enough. Okay? So anyway, in New Moon, it turns out that Edward wants to leave Bella because he doesn't want her to get hurt, even though he's leaving her in the middle of the woods alone where vampires can kill her. So anyway, that happens, and then some kind of miscalculation happens, and Edward decides he's going to expose himself, and he sparkles. It pretty much looks like what the common stripper problem looks like. It's so horribly funny. Well, it's horribly made, but it's funny. You get Jacob, who is, I think, one of the most supporting guys in these movies, who treats Bella like a human being, even though she shouldn't be treated like a human being, because she is not a human being at all. Her character is not resembling a human being at all. And he treats her normal, and yet she keeps wanting Edward, a guy who treats her like shit, but for some reason, he's so hot, and he looks troubled, and I bet if I'm with him, I think I can change him. Okay. Alright, anyway. So Eclipse comes. No freaking idea what happens in Eclipse. My sister dragged me to the movies to see that. I walked out 26 minutes in. I didn't give a shit. Because the movie, I don't know if it literally opens up with it, I forget, but it opens up with Edward and Bella talking in the flowers or something. And they're saying stupid dialogue, and I said to myself, this is the third film? I mean, it could have been a sequel to Twilight. Or hell, it could have been the first one. Nothing happened. Why is this a saga? Nothing happens to make it a saga. Okay, it's... You know how padded Breaking Dawn Part 1 is? That's the saga! You could easily tell this story, this whole story from Twilight to Breaking Dawn Part 2. You could literally tell this entire story in maybe 2 movies. That's probably what you could do. You could tell everything in 2 movies. If you could do it in 1 movie, I applaud you on that. But anyway, so that happens. So I didn't want to see it. I took it very negative, because here's what started to really tick me off. And I know I said I wouldn't be negative, but I have to mention this. When New Moon came out, Oprah Winfrey had a show where she had Robert Pattinson, Kristen Stewart, and Taylor Lautner on the show, and there were women in their 40s, cheering for this movie. And they're saying like, oh, I understand this movie. This is the greatest. Oh my God. It is so poorly made. It's so poorly paced out. These characters are so bland. I hate every one of these characters, except for Jacob. Jacob I like. And Mustache Dad. And the, well, I don't know his name, but he's the head of the Volturi. Michael Sheen. That's his real name, but I don't know his name in the show. In the movies, but Michael Sheen, the head of the Volturi, the guy who pretty much is doing Tim Curry shtick. You know, like, bring me the child. You know, that's from Breaking Dawn Part 2, but I'll get to that. So anyway, so Breaking Dawn Part 1 comes out, and I'm not gonna go see it. I don't care. I don't want to see it. It's Twilight. It's crap. But then I saw Doug Walker's review of it. He's an internet celebrity. He reviews movies and stuff, and he reviewed Breaking Dawn Part 1, and he really got pissed off of how the movie tried to talk seriously about abortion. And I saw that review. That review's like a half hour long. And I saw that, and I'm like, they did what? And I couldn't believe it. And then I saw Noah Antwiler's review of it, Spoonie. His review was literally an hour and a half long, and he did a more detailed version of Breaking Dawn Part 1, and I watched that. And it was just like Tommy Wiseau's The Room. I had to see the movie to believe it. I swallowed my pride. It was on demand. It was $5 I paid for that. Hey, it could have been worse. It could have been $6 if I paid for it in HD. But if you would just rent the movie for 24 hours or something like that. It was $5 because it was new. I clicked it. I watched it. I could not believe how bad it was. And you know, I think fans of the Twilight series didn't like that movie, and that doesn't surprise me because that movie is just horrible. The birth scene, I don't know what was running through their minds filming that birth scene. Like, I nearly puked from watching that, and I give credit to the movie for making me do that. Because there hasn't been a movie that's made me do that since I saw the movie Saw 2. So, yeah. So that happens. And there's one more thing I want to tell you guys about that movie. Something that really kind of, like, shocked me. Out of everything in that movie, in part 1 of Breaking Dawn, what shocked me the most were the end credits. And I know Noah and Twilight talked about this in his review, but I'm going to talk about something else. What shocked me about it was, that goes to prove, not only by a terrible, terrible movie, these filmmakers do not give a shit about these movies. That's why they print them out 1 year after the next year after the next year. And I know Harry Potter did the same, but Harry Potter spaced it out a little bit, you know. They kept filming and filming and filming because they knew they had to get it out before the Twilight series wasn't a phenomenon to girls anymore. It was like a fad thing. We had to get these movies out before the fad's over or else no one's going to go see the movie. That's how it feels. Because they're so poorly made, they're so poorly edited, they're so poorly directed, and I never knew, like, it wasn't until Spoonie mentioned this in his review. He said that the end credits are terrible, and I'm like, what does that mean, terrible end credits? Watch the end credits of part 1 of Breaking Dawn. It does look like a terribly made independent movie from, like, the 80s or 70s or whatever he said, I forget, but it is so poorly made, and at the end of the scene, my favorite scene in that entire movie is the end credit scene with the Volturi sitting in those seats, and you see Michael Sheen. He's the reason I watch these movies. He is just so over the top and fruity. It's beyond hilarious. It's so freaking funny. And he opens up the notice, and I love this line when he goes, "I believe, my dear, Carlisle spelled with an S." And then they zoom in on him and it fades out and they play that Bruno Mars song and the scrolling credit, they go by so fast you can't even read them. Like, the only example I can tell you of how these credits run, I was shocked. And I understand nobody reads the end credits, everything. It's the end credits, people are getting up out of their seats, they're leaving the theater, the movie's over, I get it. But for a shitty movie, people worked their asses off on this, and for scrolling credits, the movie was just, like, you know how when you're watching a movie on television and they have to speed up the end credits because of time? That's this movie. They go by so fast you can't even read the names. So imagine what this is going to look like when this movie gets on TV. It'll be a blur. Like, it'll be like this. This is how normal credits look like. This is Breaking Dawn Part 1. That's what it looks like. And I couldn't make out a word. I couldn't read a thing. And they're playing that Bruno Mars song. And I'm not dissing Bruno Mars. I do like that song. That is a pretty good song. But anyway, yeah, that's Breaking Dawn Part 1. Nothing happens in Breaking Dawn Part 1. And after seeing Part 2, the ironic thing is this. Why... I know they split up Breaking Dawn into 2 movies because Harry Potter did it. They did it for 2 reasons. Harry Potter did it, and they think this is still just as good as Harry Potter because they keep comparing it to Harry Potter. That's not just me. And it's a marketing scheme. But with Harry Potter, it was a marketing scheme as well, obviously. But it's just amazing that Part 1 is so padded, and Part 2 is hammed up. It's unbelievable. Like, Part 1 is so padded out that nothing happens, and Part 2 is so hammed up that so much shit is happening and we can't even comprehend it. Like, there was a scene in Part 2 of Breaking Dawn where Edward's sister Alice, and I think Jasper was his name, I forget, they left to convince the Volturi that Renesmee is not an immortal child, because that's why they're going after her.